So this is the patio
This is the patio door
that Jack and Lilly would have
that Jack and Lilly came out of.
Okay.
It was just past sunrise on a clear May morning when Lilly Sullivan, 6 years old, slipped out the back door of the family's mobile home in Lansdowne Station. She wore her favorite pink Barbie top and rainbow print rubber boots, her light brown hair bouncing as she ran toward the swing set. Her brother Jack, 4, followed close behind, dinosaur print boots squelching in the damp grass. Their laughter rippled across the yard, a bright promise of a normal day in a place that time seemed to slow. Janie Mackenzie, their step-grandmother, stirred on the couch inside her small RV parked beside the trailer. She dozed off mid-phone call with her brother, the soft drone of his voice mingling with the hum of the refrigerator. When her dog's sharp barks pierced the silence, she sat up, blinking against the morning light filtering through lace curtains. She recognized that sound. Barking meant the children were within reach. She listened for a moment, expecting the familiar cadence of Lilith's giggle and Jack's boyish shout. She heard them as always. Then, nothing. 20 minutes later, a voice shattered the quiet. "Lilly! Jack!" It was her son, Daniel Martel, yelling from the porch. Janie's heart slammed in her chest. She bolted from the RV, flung open the screen door, boots thudding on gravel, and saw Malahia Brooks-Murray standing in the driveway with a 16-month-old baby in her arms. One looked for the other. Both saw empty swings and silent grass. "They are gone," Malahia whispered, voice shaking so hard Janie thought she'd shatter. Every parent's worst nightmare rushed in. Janie dropped to her knees, eyes scanning the horizon. The swing's chains creaked in the breeze. The sandbox sat undisturbed. Wildflowers nodded at forest's edge. She called Lilith's name, then Jack's, heartbreaking in every step deeper into the yard. Within minutes, police cars filled the driveway. Blue lights painted the trees in frantic strobing. Volunteers arrived, neighbors who knew Janie's gentle voice, people who had watched the kids grow up on these very swings. Their flashlights cut hole after hole in the forest gloom. Bloodhounds strained at their leashes, noses to the ground. A drone hummed overhead, probing the tangle of branches and shadowed hollows. Helicopters circled, dark specks against pale sky, their rotors a restless lullaby. That day, sleet turned to rain. Mist clung to the pines. Searchers called out names that once brought joy, now echoing like a question. Why? How? Where? Despite the intensity, no children were found. No giggling voices answered back. No footprints beyond those first moments. By evening, a team from the RCMP Major Crime Unit arrived to take charge. They interviewed every adult on the property. They walked Janie through her initial steps, listened to her fear, her guilt. She recalled lying down again after the dog barked, certain she'd hear the children but too tired to open her eyes. She blamed herself for those lost seconds. "If I'd woken up sooner," she whispered, "they'd still be here." A small fragment of Lilith's pink blanket was found near the trailer's pit, crumpled in wet grass. A pair of tiny footprints, too faded to place with certainty, were spotted at the edge of a pipeline trail. Those became the only physical words in an otherwise silent morning. Every other detail, snapped twigs, scattered leaves, hints of movement, disappeared under rain and shadow. As night fell, the search wound down to a skeleton crew. Janie, Daniel, and Malahia huddled in the RV, the baby asleep between them. They passed around a cup of lukewarm coffee. Tears glistened on their cheeks. They talked about simple things, favorite games, tomorrow's breakfast, because words were all they had to fill the emptiness. Before dawn, Janie took up her vigil again. She leaned on the porch rail, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at the swing set. The cold air smelled of pine and wet earth, and every breath felt like a prayer. "Please," she said to the darkness, "just bring them home." They rose with the dawn, hearts still aching from another night without answers. Search teams resumed in fits and starts, sometimes dozens of volunteers fanning out at first light, other days only RCMP squads scouring the same muddy trails. The dense Nova Scotia woods offered no safety net for two small souls. Deadfalls from storms past created a maze of fallen trees. Thick moss coated every surface, muffling footsteps. One wrong turn could bring a Scotia miles from the last known spot. Yet the RCMP pushed on, gathering every scrap of possible evidence. They collected over 5,000 video files, home security cameras, dashcams, even a store's CCTV from a neighboring community. Analysts in Halifax's digital forensics lab replayed each clip frame by frame, a glint of pink by the road's edge, an odd stain on a passing pickup's fender, a shadow slipping through the undergrowth. Every hint was catalogued under code numbers, entered into an ever-growing database. Meanwhile, detectives interviewed more than 50 people who might have information: neighbors, day laborers, passing truckers. Some agreed to take polygraph tests. Others, shaken by the grim task, shook their heads and said only, "I didn't see anything." In their eyes, fear sometimes glimmered. Fear of being wrong, of pointing investigators down a dead end, of owning a memory that could save a life but also shatter a family's hope if later proven inaccurate. By mid-June, the provincial government stepped in with a 6-figure incentive. "This is our community," Attorney General Becky Druhan said in a press release. "We cannot let these children vanish without a fight." A reward of up to $150,000 stands for any information leading to their safe return or locating their remains. The promise of money felt both comforting and hollow. Comforting, because any incentive might spur someone to speak up. Hollow, because no sum could erase the gulf of 3 missing months. As word spread, media outlets across Canada picked up the story. A tearful broadcast interview with Janie Mackenzie aired on CTV, her voice breaking through the speakers of living rooms thousands of kilometers away. "They weren't mine by blood," she said, "but I love them like my own. Please, if you know anything, just tell us." Viewers couldn't help but feel her grief. She looked every bit a grandmother desperate to cradle her grandchildren again. Local crews responded with renewed vigor. On a humid Saturday, nearly 100 volunteers marched out along the old logging roads, some carrying homemade trail cameras, others brandishing GPS units synced to a live map. They wore T-shirts emblazoned with photographs of Lilly and Jack, their smiles frozen in time beneath the slogan, "Bring them home." Children from nearby schools joined in, drawing chalk murals on sidewalks, writing "Please help find Lilly and Jack" on poster boards, and handing out flyers at the grocery store. A week later, when no new clues emerged, a hush fell over Lansdowne Station. Conversations in diners and hardware stores grew quieter. People exchanged worried glances instead of speculation. If the search had peaked, they still refused to let it fade. Candlelit vigils, once weekly, now took place every few days. Prayers rose in Anglican, Catholic, MIKMAC, and interfaith gatherings alike. At one outdoor service, the presiding pastor, voice shaking with emotion, said, "We stand in solidarity with this family, because every child is ours to protect." In Ottawa and Halifax, advocates pointed to the Sullivans' plight as a wake-up call for rural safety. Could 2 young children really slip away without a trace? They urged more funding for search and rescue training, community alarm systems, and emergency response grants for isolated areas. Politicians nodded sympathetically, promising to consider new measures, yet no legislation moved forward amidst broader budget battles. Back on Gairloch Road, the Sullivans' property sat silent but for the hum of a solitary generator. The swing set, once a playground of sunshine and laughter, hung still, its chains rust-flecked at the joints. Across the yard, Janie's RV looked lived-in but weary, its tiny window shadowed by late afternoon clouds. A solitary plastic chair sat by the front steps, where, on some days, someone might stop to stand guard, to listen for a child's voice amid the woods. Daniel and Malahia took turns staying on the property, but each night they retreated to a friend's home in nearby Pictou. The sorrow there was raw, too heavy to shoulder in the place of loss. At their friend's kitchen table, they'd sip tea in silence. Occasionally, Daniel would phone a reporter for updates, always the same line: "We need to keep this in the news. Our babies are still out there." Despite the heartbreak, the family insisted on unity. No public spats, no blaming the police or each other. They presented a front of solidarity that quietly masked the ruptures of grief. But grief has a way of leaking through the cracks. At local church gatherings, Malahia sometimes missed it up when melodies rose in her ears. Daniel caught himself scrawling Lilith's name on cardboard signs in a tremor of hope. Janie, always poised, once broke down when asked about the day her grandchildren disappeared. "I'm tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired. But I can't stop looking." As the summer deepened, the woods grew an emerald canopy. Moss draped like curtains over branches, fiddleheads curled in tight emerald springs. Each new leaf felt like a promise of renewal, yet one that hadn't yet extended to Lilly and Jack. It was then that a retired conservation officer named Roland Dupuis stepped forward. He'd spent decades tracking wildlife across Nova Scotia's wild corners. He offered to volunteer with his keen eyes and decades-honed instincts. On a muggy July morning, he led a small team deep into an area near the pipeline where those prints were found. They trod softly, pausing to study bark markings and flattened grass, whispering name tags like sacred incantations. Roland found little that day, just a scattering of birch seeds, a mottled leaf, and a small, unidentifiable scrap of cloth just beyond a mossy log. It wasn't much, but Janie, who joined them that afternoon, touched the cloth with trembling fingers, as if willing it to speak. "This was Lily's favorite blanket," she said. "Maybe it can help us find the rest." They collected the scrap for testing. In the lab, forensic specialists combed it for fibers, soil samples, trace DNA. Results took days, stretching into weeks. Finally, they confirmed it matched Lily's blanket, but nothing more. No blood, no saliva, no prints. Just more questions. Through it all, the RCMP kept up the pressure. They reminded the public that every tip mattered, no matter how trivial. A local radio station aired public service announcements. "Did you see a child matching Lily's or Jack's description on Gairloch Road in early May? Your memories could help." Listeners called in with accounts of a green Subaru parked near the exit, of a tired postal worker who remembered two small faces at her mailbox, but none led to Lilly and Jack. In mid-July, the RCMP held a press conference. Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon stood before cameras, pausing to clear his throat. He acknowledged the family's pain, thanked volunteers for their tireless work, and pleaded anew for public assistance. "We remain committed to finding out what happened," he said. "We will review every scrap of evidence, follow every lead. If you have information, please call us. Help us end this nightmare." The words felt familiar, but in the echo of that room, hope found new life. Because even seasoned investigators don't use such language lightly. Their tone carried the weight of 3 lost months, of a case that had grown cold, and of 2 children still missing. That evening, Janie, Daniel, and Malahia gathered on the porch steps. The sun sank low, painting the yard gold. Janie set out 5 small lanterns, one for each day of the search, and lit them in silence. Each flame wavered in the breeze, like tiny pleas floating toward the sky. And then they prayed, for guidance, for patience, for courage to keep searching. They prayed for the stranger who knew the children's fate to speak up, and they prayed for their grandchildren to find their way home. If you've made it this far, know this: the story of Lilly and Jack is far from over. The case demands more than official updates. It demands action from every one of us. Look at your security footage. Ask your neighbors what they recall. Share this story with someone who might have lived on the edge of that search area. Volunteer a skill. Attend a vigil. Be a witness to history, to the power of a community refusing to give up on 2 small lives. Because in the hush between each breath, amid the moss and shadows, in the headlights of a passing car, Lilly and Jack may yet appear. Someone knows something, and that someone might just be you.